Hey everyone, Wags here from Eagle Dynamics. In the previous two videos, we introduced you to the MiG-29 startup, taxi, and takeoff. In this video, we'll learn navigation in the Fulcrum and how to land it. The MiG-29A navigation is quite a bit different than navigating other fourth-generation aircraft like the Viper and F-18C, but once you get your head around it, it's a rather easy system to use. For this video, we're parked in a hot Fulcrum at Herat Airfield in western Afghanistan. I'm going to explain two methods of creating your navigation points, using basic mission editor functions and using the data transfer card or DTC. When using basic mission editor functions, you can place up to 6 points. The first 3 are assigned to 3 navigation panel aerodrome buttons, and the second 3 are assigned to the 3 waypoint buttons. You cannot assign radio beacons using this method. You'll need to use the DTC for that. When using the DTC option, you can also assign the 3 radio beacon navigation buttons on the navigation panel and a lot more control over aerodrome points and waypoints. Note that the real MiG-29A does not have an actual DTC card, but is rather programmed into the aircraft prior to flight. For both methods, we'll create a navigation plan from Herat to Shindand in the south. As the Fulcrum uses an inertial navigation system or INS that can drift, we'll also discuss how to tighten the alignment using a visual fix. In addition to creating navigation points, we'll also touch on return to base, landing, and missed approach modes. This is going to be one of the longer videos, so let's get started. Let's now jump into the mission editor and lay down some navigation points using basic mission editor functions without having to use the DTC. So we're going to make sure that we have aircraft selected, we have the add button, and the first 3 points I'm going to lay down are going to be the 3 aerodromes corresponding to the switch in the AD position. So we're going to place the first here at my recovery airfield at Shindand. The second will be my first divert to the south at Farah. And the third aerodrome button will be my divert to the north at Kalyana. Next will be the 3 waypoints, which will correspond to the switch being in the WP position. So the first will be to the south of Herat, second will be, say, midway between Herat and my recovery, and the third on approach into Shindand. And like I mentioned before, if you instead wanted to have 6 geographic waypoints, you could set those aerodromes as geographic points, not assign to a specific aerodrome, rather any geographic location. Just need to make sure that you have the switch in the AD position to access those. Okay, let's jump back into the cockpit now. Now that we've laid down those 6 points in the mission editor, we can see them reflected in the navigation panel. So right now we have the switch set to AD for aerodromes, and the first button with the 1 indicates our landing airfield at Shindand. Button number 2 is our divert airfield at Farah, and number 3 is our divert field at Kalyana. Now let's switch to waypoint. So waypoint 1 is that point we made just south of Herat. And at the top, you see D less than 21, in this case, 21 nautical miles. If we were using metric, it would say D less than 40 for kilometers. And this simply, as you might imagine, indicates that the distance of that point is less than the distance displayed here. Waypoint 2 is that midway waypoint we place between Herat and Shindand, and number 3 is that approach point into Shindand. Let's go back to waypoint 1. At the top, we also have the channels, auto and manual. Generally keep this in auto, and also when it's in auto, note that when you approach 3 nautical miles or 6 kilometers of that point, the HSI will freeze until you press the next navigation button. Also note that when you press a navigation button, whether it's a waypoint or an aerodrome, you'll also see this reflected on the HSI with the double line bearing, the DME in miles or kilometers, and its course. Now, as mentioned earlier, you cannot place an RSBN beacon on the navigation panel assigned to a beacon button unless you're using the DTC. But that doesn't mean you can't use RSBNs without using the DTC. So in this case, I have an RSBN assigned here to my takeoff airfield at Herat. I'm going to select that. We can see that it's a placeable unit under the category of unarmed. The type is RSBN car. And coming down to the advanced waypoint actions, let's double click on that. And we can see the type is perform command and the action is activate RSBN PRMG beacon. I've assigned it a channel of 3 with a call sign of HER, short for Herat. Close that. And in the same manner, here at my recovery airfield at Shindand, I also place an RSBN beacon. This one here, advanced waypoint actions. And in this case, same setup, but I have this one assigned on channel 5 with a call sign of SHI. Okay, so now that we have a couple RSBN beacons set up within the mission editor, let's take a look at these on the navigation panel. First, from the channel switch, we're going to go from auto to manual and make sure below that the switch is set to RSBN and not ADF, which we'll take a look at here in a second. At the bottom, we have 2 different fields, one's for navigation and one for landing. And for the navigation field, what we're going to do is we're going to set that number to match the channel of the RSBN beacon we want to signal from. So in this case, it's going to be 3 for the RSBN at Herat. And below it, we have 2 different dials, a lower, outer, shorter one, which actually controls the generation of the beacon. And we just do one generation within DCS, so this is going to be in-op. But the inner, larger one is what we're going to do to set the channel for the RSBN, in this case 3. So right-click on it to 3. And then you'll notice on the HSI, we now have the yellow needle indicating the bearing to that RSBN beacon. If we switch it to 5 now, it moves just a little bit, and now that corresponds to the RSBN down at Shindand. To set up the ADF, we're first going to need to go to the radio panel and make sure that the frequency of our ADF is assigned to the ARC-19. So the frequency we're looking for here is at 412 kilohertz. And if we go to the bottom at the ARC-19, I'm going to assign it to channel 1 outer, which we see here as 412. And while we're here, let's set up our ATC radio. So at channel 0, I have it set as my Herat ATC, and channel 1 is a Shindand ATC. Let's now talk about some of the remaining features on the navigation panel. First, there's the reset button. And if you're in waypoint or aerodrome navigation, you press this button, it will instead use the first beacon available for navigation. Now, as you might imagine, this is only applicable when you use the DTC to create your navigation. To exit out, just hit the reset button a second time. Then there's the compensation 0 button, and this is used for in-flight alignment of the inertial navigation system based on a fixed ground point. But we'll come back to this later in the video. Below that is the circle switch, and this simply determines whether or not you're going to circle to the left or the right after a missed approach to re-enter the pattern. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit later. And then there's the course switch between 180, 359, or 0 to 179. And this is set based on your takeoff or landing heading. Then there's a return button, and this simply transitions you between en route mode to the landing modes. And then there's the landing switch that, when enabled, will allow the autopilot to automatically land to the course if the airfield is already set up and programmed into the navigation system. There's also an ident button for the ATC, but this is currently unsupported. Let's talk about the DTC, or the data transfer cartridge now. And at least for me, this is one of the most interesting aspects of the Fulcrum at release, and that'll be our first aircraft with full navigation DTC elements. So to get there, we're going to go to Edit, go down to DTC Manager, then from File, let's create a brand new one. We're going to hit New. Aircraft type, we'll keep it as a Fulcrum, and the data name we're going to call 29 WAGS 1, and hit OK. Clear that. Okay, so here we have our file name, 29 WAGS-1. We have 3 different programs we can set for this aircraft, program 1, 2, and 3. And we have a selected program, and the program with the checkbox is the one that's going to load. So I'm going to do program 1 and select it here. Below that, we have the tabs for either nav or weapons and CMDS. We'll come back to this later. I'm going to stick to nav for now. And then right below that, we have a checkbox for do not upload tab data. All this means is that when it's checked, the DTC data will not be loaded. But we want to load the DTC data, so we're going to uncheck that box. In the center of the window, we have 5 tabs: points, waypoints, airdromes, RSBN, and route. Now with points, we can place as many points as we wish to create a points database, and then from that, we'll assign them either waypoints, airdromes, or RSBN. So to do that, we're going to hit the Add button and start placing some points. So first, I'm going to kind of mimic what I did just using standard mission editor functions. I'm going to place the first here down at Shindan. Coming south to Farah, I'm going to make that 0.2. Up to the north, Aquala Ina, make that number 3. And now 3 more points, which I'm going to assign as waypoints. So one just south of Herat, one about midway, and one more as we get closer in. Okay, so we got 6 points. We can see steer points are 6. We can choose the format. We have location, elevation, and terrain. Of course, we have the 6 listed here. If we want, we can put in notes. So for example, say at 0.4, coming out of Herat, which is going to be a waypoint, I could call this depart, for example. We have these snap blue icons, which, as you might imagine, centers each of those points on the map. Then, as you might imagine, the red bin icon will delete them. Okay, moving to the next, which is waypoints. So the waypoints we're going to use are going to be 4, 5, and 6. To do that, from the dropdown, first we're going to pick 0.4 and hit Add. See, it turns yellow. We also have it as waypoint 1. Number 5, Add. And number 6, Add. So we got 3 waypoints, waypoint 1, 2, and 3, which are assigned to points 4, 5, and 6. And again, we have the snap option, the lead option, and we're good to go there. Let's go to the next tab, which is airdromes. A little bit different here. So our airdromes we're going to do are the ones, again, we set up before in the mission editor. And we could do this either as points again, but in this case, I'm going to do it actually as the airfields on this map. So the first one is going to be Shindan and Add. Second, divert is going to be Farah. And the last one, Kuala Na, Add. But again, if we wanted to, we could actually make these points and essentially have them act as a geographic navigation point. Also note, we can select our landing runway at each of these airfields. So for example, for Shindan, which is going to be my landing airfield, I'm going to be going from north to south. So we want to make sure that we're using the 180 runway, which we are. And we also have the option to set the PRMG channel, which is, again, much like an ILS. And I'm going to make this channel 12 for this airfield. The next one is the RSBN. Again, kind of like a VOR with a DME. And again, we could set these either as the points we drop down, or we'll have a list of the different RSBN stations we placed within this mission. So I have one at Herat by my base. I'm going to select that as the first one. The second is going to be the one at my landing base, which is going to be Shindan. And that's the only 2 we really need here. And we can also see the channel assigned to those, which we placed in the mission editor. Finally, we got the route tab, where we can, again, take all the points we put together earlier and make a route out of it. So we're going to start here at Herat, which is going to be RSBN number 1 location, which you can see here. And we're going to go to waypoint 1, then to waypoint 2, waypoint 3, and then landing at Shindan, which is going to be our airfield number 1. And now we have a route. Now that we've created our DTC for this mission, let's go ahead and save it. First, we're going to save the actual DTC file. Let's close out of that. Let's grab our aircraft. And we're going to go to the DTC tab and check that 29 WAGS 1 is selected and checked as our DTC that's going to be loaded with this particular mission. And when that's done, then we can essentially go to File and Save, and we're good to go. Okay, so after that rather long explanation on mission preparations, let's take a look at a practical example. We'll take off here at Herat, we'll fly south, we'll do a missed approach at Shindan, circle back around, and then do a full stop landing. Before we go too much further, let's take a look at the DTC and make sure everything is set up correct. And to do that, we're going to hold down right control, right shift, and K. And we do that. We're on program 1. And the points, you can see we have all 6 points listed. For the waypoints, we have 3 waypoints. For this example, we're just going to use 1 and 2. The aerodromes. And the important one is going to be Shindan, which is going to be our landing airfield, hence the note. We can see that the runway is going to be 18, landing course 182.3, and the PRMG channel is 12. But as you may recall, when we actually created this mission, that the localizer and glide slope for Shindan are actually on channel 6, not 12. So let's change that now. And the RSBNs, we have one here at Herat and then one at Shindan. Coming back out. Okay, let's zoom in to the nav panel. And we're going to make sure that the gyro is main. We're in auto. RSBN is currently selected. The first point is going to be a waypoint, so we're going to switch it to waypoint. And it's number 1. You can see it's less than 21 kilometers away and it's correlated. Beacon is going to be number 2, which is going to be Shindan, which we'll get steering for. Moving down, we do the missed approach. We're going to have it circle to the left automatically, so we're going to keep it in left. The landing heading is 182, so we're going to change the course switch to 180 to 359. And at the bottom for the landing, again, it's not going to be 12, it's going to be 6. So let's bring that down there. And while we're here, let's test the ADF really quick. So we're going to go to channel 1, ADF, and ADF on the F. So we have our Morse code, and here on the HSI, we can see that the yellow needle is pointing to about 140 degrees, which is the location of our ADF signal. Back to RSBN. Set the radio back to channel 0 and ADF off. Turn off the master caution. Okay, let's contact tower. Request taxi.
101. Руление. 101. Разрешаю руление на полосу 1-8.
Yeah, it's a pretty crowded ramp, and one of the things the Fulcrum would do, kind of like the Hornet, is we can use a high gain nose wheel steering to do tighter turns. But to do that, we need to make sure that we have the flaps in the up position. Do that first.
Check aircraft.
And now, by holding down the lock button in combination with the rudder pedals, we can steer the aircraft. So I'm going to hold down the lock button and give it a little throttle. And we're off. And it looks like we have some Fulcrums on a det from Mary Air Force Base, where they act as a Top Gun aggressor squadron. And having Mary on the Afghan map would certainly be quite cool. Okay, I'll come to a stop here at the hull short. Okay, check the pitot heat is on. Seat is armed. Let's close canopy all the way. Make sure we have a flush pin. Cockpit lighting is good. We don't need external lighting because it's a day mission. Fulcrum pilots sometimes will actually turn on the landing lights on to scare off birds. So let's go ahead and do that. Set the flaps to takeoff now. And let's fold down our mirrors. And now request takeoff clearance.
101. Взлет. 101. Взлет по готовности. Отход по схеме на 300. По давлению 678,03.
Okay, taking the wrong way. A little bright. Let's bring down the visor. And come to a halt here. Visor up. Okay, ready to take off. So we're on the brake. Run up the throttles to military power. Looking for no more than 4 or 5% difference in engine RPM. And release. And burner. Looking for about 220, 230 kph to rotate. And rotate to 10 degrees. Gears up, flaps up, and once the gear's all the way up, we're going to get our steering circle up on the HUD. 500 kph, come out of burner. And now to go to our first point, which is waypoint 1, we're simply going to fly the cross in the center of the HUD into that circle. We'll cross-reference that on the HSI. Keeping 10 degrees. And unlike the Hornet and Viper, the Fulcrum definitely does not have auto trim, so you'll definitely be giving the trim how to work out. Okay, waypoint 1 is reached. Now we're going to hit the second button for waypoint 2. About the same steering. At this point, we can start to level out. And right about there. And we can also use our VVI to get to level flight right about there. Let's zoom into the HUD and talk a little bit about some of this very basic symbology. So first, up in the top left corner is our airspeed. Right now it's in kilometers per hour, but based on our units of measurement, it could also be imperial, so it could be in knots. Below that is our energy caret. If it's centered like it is now, it means we're maintaining our airspeed. If it goes to the left, it means we're losing airspeed, and if it goes to the right, we are gaining airspeed. In the center, as you might imagine, is our heading tape, and then to the right of that is our altitude. Right now it's in meters, but again, based on how we set our options, that could also be in feet. Along the right is our pitch ladder, and the center is the altitude indicator with both roll and artificial horizon, and at the bottom is the range to our selected point, waypoint 2 in this case, at about coming up on 7 kilometers. Back out. Okay, coming up on waypoint 2. 3 clicks. Okay, at this point, let's go ahead and go to return mode down the navigation panel. We need to go to aerodrome because it's time to land, and we're going to keep it on 1, which is correlated to Shindan airfield, and we can see our landing PRMGs still on 6, which is good. Okay, 45 kilometers out, so I'm going to start to descend now gradually to intercept the localizer and glide slope. And in my brief time in the Fulcrum, I found about 750 meters works best for me, but of course your mileage may vary. Let's contact ATC Shindan. So channel 1, push to talk, ATC Shindan and inbound.
101. Возврат.
101. Следуйте курсом 177. Удаление 19. Давление 665,00. Посадочное 18. Занимайте высоту круга.
Okay, I'm also looking to slow down to about 500 kph. And waiting for a glide slope intercept. In the meantime, I could also slow down by pressing and holding the B key for the speed brake. Now to use it, you cannot have a centerline tank and the landing gear must be down. Okay, 500 and release, and the brakes automatically retract. And I'm going to pause here for a second and zoom into the HUD. And now we have 2 new symbols at the bottom of the HUD on either side of the distance. And those are the icons indicating that we've locked onto both the localizer and the glide slope. And we also have the steering circle. And this gives us a nice indication of localizer steering as well as our glide slope. And in this case, you can see that the circle is so high that we are well under glide slope. Coming down to the HSI, in the very center, we have a row of horizontal dots and a row of vertical dots. We also have a solid horizontal line and a solid vertical line. Now, the solid horizontal line, that indicates our glide slope. And when it's above the center, indicated by those horizontal dots, it means that we are below glide slope. Whereas if it was below the center point, it means we are above glide slope. The vertical line, you can see it's a little bit off to the left. That means we need to steer a little bit to the left to get on course. Whereas if it was off to the right, we need to steer to the right to get on course. Now, naturally, to be on glide slope and on localizer, we want to have both those solid lines to form a perfect cross in the center of the HSI. Okay, and on pause. And next we're looking for 400 kph, and at that point we can lower the gear and landing flaps. And again, we can see that we are under glide slope, but localizer, we're pretty well lined up. 19 kilometers out. Okay, 400. Gear coming down and flaps to landing. Need to come a little bit to the right. And whether or not you use the HUD steering circle or the HSI is certainly up to you. I tend to vacillate between the two. Angle attack-wise, we're looking for 7 degrees. And as long as we maintain at 7 degrees, regardless of our gross weight, we'll be on speed landing. Okay, we see our localizer starting to come back to the left now, and we'll come to the left for lineup. Still under glide slope. Okay, we're starting to see that circle come down.
101. Работайте с посадкой.
And I'm going to be using my throttles to control my glide slope. Okay, I don't want to get too high. I'm going to catch it right over here with adding just a little bit of throttle. Okay, now we're above. Bringing back my throttles. And give it a little throttle to catch it before it goes too far.
Проверьте выпуск шасси. Ветер у земли 1,83. Скорость 8 метров в секунду. Посадочная 1,8.
Throttles up, catching glide slope. Okay, over the threshold, flare to 10 degrees. Should touch down about 280 to 290 on the mains, and power back up. 10 degrees, wheels up, flaps up, and we're going to press Mr. Approach button.
Altitude.
Come to the right at a 30-degree bank because we have the circle switch set to left. If we had it set to the right, it would give us direction to circle to the right. A little fast. We want to be airfield pattern around 500 kph at 600. So getting a little high now as well. And we're coming around almost reciprocal course of our landing head, 182. Okay, we can see by the beacon needle, we are abeam of the runway right now, right there. And now we're going to fly out 22 kilometers, and at that point, the missed approach light on the button will come off, and we'll execute a return just like we did before. Now, while we're flying out to 22, we still have this landing switch at the bottom of the nav panel. So with this last landing, we used return mode because we had the aerodrome programmed into DTC, and we were able to use the return mode. And once we got close in, as you saw, it automatically switched to the PRMG localizer and glide slope. But you may have a case where you're flying a mission and the airfield is not set up for a return. In that case, though, if the airfield does have PMRG units on it, and you have that channel set up on your nav panel, and your hemisphere set up correctly, once you get within about, say, 15 kilometers or so, and you move the landing switch to the up position, then if everything is set up correctly, you'll actually get localizer and glide slope support at that airfield. Okay, almost at 22. Okay, 22, changed over. Missed approach light went out, and now we'll go back to another 30 turn to the left. As you might imagine, this type of pattern or approach using the instruments would generally be used for instrument flight rules, whether it's night or bad weather. But in the next segment of this video, actually the second to next video, we'll do a VFR, or visual flight rules overhead break to take a look at that. And start bringing my airspeed again back to 400 so I can get the gear and flaps down. Okay, capture, 400, gear, flaps.
Check gear.
And we can see we need to come to the left and a little bit below glide slope. Okay, lineup's pretty good. Glide slope still a little bit low. And last approach is pretty ugly. Hopefully this one will be a little bit better. Okay, lined up on glide slope. Now the key is to hold this. little low. And throttles back, pitch up to 10, down to 290. And nose coming down. Press P to release the chute on the brake. And right control P to release the chute.
1-0-1. Заруливайте на стоянку.
And again, another not pretty landing, but I got down. Okay, let's take a look at the next part. So next, let's take a look at how to do a visual navigation fix. So during the course of a mission, if you're flying over 40 to 60 minutes, probably going to be pretty rare here in the Fulcrum, you may have some accumulated INS drift that we need to correct for. And we can do that by placing a waypoint on a very visible geographic feature. And then what we could do is, with that waypoint selected, we'll fly over that geographic feature, and once we're right over it, we're going to hit the compensation 0 button, or by pressing the 9 key to update our aircraft location to it to zero out that error. Okay, so I'm going to unpause. I'm going to disable my beacon now, so we don't have that helping to correlate our INS. And following the road here, I'm looking for a road bridge over a river, and you can see that river up ahead at about 11 o'clock. Okay, there's a bridge right above my nose right there. Okay, lined up and just waiting to be almost right over the river. Right about there. Now I'm going to hit the compensation 0 button. And I've updated my alignment for waypoint 1. And again, I keep flying longer. You may have to do an INS update again. But again, I think overall that's going to be pretty rare. Now in this last section of this rather long video, we're going to take a look at a VFR, or Visual Flight Rules Recovery, using a standard overhead brake pattern. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to approach the runway, and we're going to fly over it at about 300 knots and 2,000 feet. And once we are midfield, we'll come back on the throttles, and we'll do a 30-degree bank off to the left, maintaining altitude. As we're coming back around, we'll be losing airspeed, and once we get down to about 220 to 200 knots, we're going to go ahead and lower the gear, as well as setting flaps to landing. And then once the wingtip is about parallel with the threshold of the runway, we'll do our final base leg turn 30 degrees back into the runway. And as we're coming down, we're going to maintain about a 7 degrees angle of attack all the way down to the runway. Now, you may also notice that this time I have the measurements set up to imperial. So that being said, up in the top left corner, rather than kilometers per hour, it is indicated knots. And in the top right corner, instead of meters, it's in feet. Okay, let's take a look. So on pause, coming back on the speed, getting back up a bit. Okay, 300 at 2,000 feet, right about where I want to be. Okay, midfield, coming back on the throttle, 30-degree bank. Note our barometric altitude at 5,000. I'm going to try to hold that as best as I can as I'm coming back around. Okay, 200 knots, bringing the gear down, setting flaps to landing. Get a little slow, bringing some throttle back in. Okay, on the downwind. Okay, waiting for that left wingtip to again be about coincident with the runway threshold. Okay, at the perch, I'm going to go ahead 30 degrees again, this to the left. And starting to slowly bringing down the altitude at the same time. And you may need to float or tighten your turn just a little bit to make sure you get that proper lineup on the runway. Okay, as I'm coming in, I'm going to more start to target that 7 degrees angle of attack. It's right about what we have now. And like we did before, we're going to adjust our angle of attack with forward back on the stick and our glide slope using the throttles. Throttles to idle, flaring, should be done about 160, and we're down, and release the chute on the brakes. And cut the brake again, right control MP.
101. Заруливайте на стоянку.
So folks, that's a look at navigation and landing using a lot of the new mission editor functions, the DTC, and then looking at IFR, VFR landings, as well as doing a visual fix. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Thanks.